So my role at Verse is carrier relations director. So what we do in the carrier relations department is we stay very engaged with our carrier relation vendors. Also, we stay on top of all of the FCC, TCPA, CTIA compliance. I'm very involved in that. It's forever changing. So that is something that we have to look at on a daily basis to see what's new and what's out there. And then we can bring that into Verse and actually apply that to our customer campaigns, make sure that everybody's compliant, make it easy for them to be compliant. Also within the role, we do monitoring and analytical data. So it's a lot of getting feedback to see what's working, what's not working for our customers. And then we can align and adjust that way.
And are people surprised when they hear that we have a person like you on our staff? Like, what kind of interactions do you have with customers or with the carriers themselves?
Yeah. So with the customers themselves, I actually just engaged with one the other day that didn't understand opt out, didn't understand opt in, didn't know why it was necessary. So the success team had me come on and speak to the customer. And it was so valuable because within 5 minutes, I was able to explain what we do for that customer and how the regulations that we're setting, are from the federal and state level. And so they are necessary. But being able to really kind of break that down for a customer that has no idea what any of that means is truly valuable because it just kind of allows them to take a back seat and not have to worry about it and just say, okay, you've explained it. That makes sense. Tell me what to do. And so it makes it a lot easier for our customers to not have to deal with all of that portion themselves and then to try and have to seek out what does this terminology mean? What does this mean? How does that apply to us? And why is it necessary? So, having somebody like myself and our team, carrier relations team and compliance team at Verse is extremely helpful to keep our businesses successful and keep their customers engaged.
So, can you tell me what is a carrier and why is it important in our business?
So a carrier, it's a telecommunications provider. It's a mobile network operator. So what they do is they are in charge of delivering our SMS and our voice inbound and outbound. They deliver all the traffic. They make sure that it's done in a timely manner and a reliable manner. So basically when an individual sends a SMS message or a voice call, it directs itself to this carrier. The carrier then receives it and makes sure that it's timely delivered to the end user. So within that, a carrier is actually extremely important because they are in charge of making sure that data privacy, content, spamming, anything that, an end user doesn't want to see on their side, they make sure that they actually regulate and keep compliance on that.
And what's an example of a carrier? Is that like Verizon?
Yeah, there's a lot of carriers out there. There's Verizon, there's AT&T, T-Mobile. Those are some of the big carriers out there. And these carriers are really valuable because their service is in rural and urban locations and areas. So it allows businesses to really kind of expand their messaging service to anywhere within the United States, whether it's, an urban area or a rural area. They have such expansion of their network that your messages will get delivered no matter what the region, no matter what the location. So they're extremely important.
What's the purpose of a carrier relations person? Why does a business need to think about that?
The purpose of carrier relations is to kind of take that responsibility and that stress away from a business having to do all the legwork. We do it for them. So within the carrier relations team, we stay on top of all the regulations, federal and state, and we then bring that to our best practices. So then we can just relay that in a very easy way to our customers and say, hey, here's the outline of what needs to be done for best practices. And we kind of relay it in a way that's easy for them to understand and takes the legwork off of that.
What would you say businesses need to know about sending texts that maybe they don't know right now?
With businesses sending text, the most important thing is having opt-in, right? Compliance, consent. That's number one TCPA rule is that you must have consent for sending a consumer or a recipient a text message. The other thing is that you want to look and you want to focus on your content and your tone within the content. You want it to be personalized. You want it to be engaging. You don't want to send out mass promotions that's not really engaging. You're not going to get a lot of feedback or engagement back from your consumers. You want it to be personalized campaign. You also want to look at your time time and your frequency on that, right? So how many messages are you really sending out? Are you sending messages out every few minutes? Well, that kind of looks spammy and you don't want to do that. So at Verse, we kind of help you do all of that for you, right? We look at the timing and the frequency. We look at the time zones that a consumer that you're sending a message out to is in. So it's appropriate where they're not getting annoyed by your text message or, it's late hours. You also want to look at regulations. So what regulations? Because they are state by state. So having a team at Verse really helps you provide all that information, and we take all that on for you to where we're automating all of the messages and making sure they're within the time zone and within the days. There are certain days that a message can't go out due to, say, Memorial Day or Labor Day. So we take care of all of that for you. So you don't really have to have all that in your database. It's in ours.
So you said one of the reasons why you'd have carrier relations is deliverability and kind of ensuring that messages get sent. What would cause a business to be blocked by a carrier?
So there's several things a carrier will block a message by. Number one is consent. Do you have opt-in? Do you have either written or on a form consent that the consumer actually wants that message? That's number one. A carrier will also block according to content, right? So you want your message to be clear, concise, personalized. You want to identify your business within that message. If it looks very spammy, a carrier may block that message saying it's not personalized. It doesn't actually relate to the message that you're trying to send out for your business. So it'll block it for that reason. So within our scripting team at Verse, we actually monitor the scripts that are going out to see what they look like compared to the campaign and the industry that's using that script. And so we can actually make real-time changes. So say if we see a carrier blocking any messages, we can go in and actually change and adjust that script to best practices. And then the flow goes through nicely and it's actually delivered. So it's really nice to have that at Verse to where you're doing it in real time and you're monitoring carrier blocking. The other reason for a carrier to block your messages is not having opt out. You have to give a reliable and easy, straightforward way for a consumer to opt out, whether that's just using the words unsubscribe or stop or end. So those are kind of the main reasons that a carrier will block a message. Also, sometimes a carrier will block a message if you're sending too many messages within a short period of time. That looks like spam to a carrier, and they really can't differentiate between whether you're legit or not. So if there's a flux of mass messaging going out with the exact same script within it, a carrier could block you for that too. So that's why at Verse, we try to change the scripting too, so that as we're sending messages, they don't all look the same and seem the same, to where it won't actually be eyed upon by the carrier to then block it as spam.
And how do carriers know when, let's say, the content is content that's spammy or maybe they're not providing any opt outs? How do they know? Are they auditing 1 out of 100 messages? How do they find out that people are violating that?
The main CTIA carriers that are actually keeping an eye on that is Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T. They all have their own regulations, but for the most part, they're pretty much the same. Some are a little bit stricter than others. So depending on what carrier network your message is going through, it could be blocked for several different reasons. But they do have a lot of algorithm, and it is being monitored in a per second throughput basis. So their algorithm will catch keywords, or they'll catch derogatory words, or they will catch how many messages have gone out within a short period of time with the exact same language. So yeah, they have their algorithms that they're constantly monitoring how your messages are going out.
How does a business know when their texts aren't being delivered? Is there a message internally that says that text was not delivered, or how fast does a company find out that they've been blocked?
So that's one of the great things about Verse is our carrier relations team. We monitor not only the opt-out rate for a customer, but we also monitor the error rate for a customer. So we're seeing that in real time. As the message is getting blocked within a second or two, we're seeing data reports that are showing, hey, this customer, this specific script is being blocked. And then that allows us to go in and actually make the correct changes. And we can look at it and see, is it because of compliance? Is it because the carrier thinks that it's spam? What can we do to go in and change it? So that's a real advantage of Verse that we have. We are monitoring 24 hours a day, every single second, to see what a customer's blockage rate looks like and what their opt-out rate looks like, and what we can do best practice way to actually adjust it and keep that customer engaged and keep the carriers at bay.
So if you were a business, let's say you don't have Verse and you get blocked, how does that work for them? How would a regular business go about getting unblocked?
For a regular business that's not using an engagement platform like Verse, Verse, it's actually very difficult because the carriers don't really tell you why your message would be blocked or give you a straightforward answer to where you can always stay within the boundaries of not being blocked. You need a company like Verse that's very acknowledged and constantly learning of what the carriers are doing, of how they're blocking, why they're blocking. And so without a company like Person, if you're just doing it by yourself, it's very hard to understand one, that you've been blocked because you have no monitoring system because you have to work directly with the carrier in order for that to happen. Most platforms and most businesses don't have that back end to where they're directly linked in with their carrier to monitor and analyze that data. And then also, if they say they do have it and they do see that they're blocked, it's very hard when you don't have a compliance team to actually directly work with somebody within that carrier that you're engaged and set up with to find out why you were blocked and how to actually change it and fix it. And so then if you do, it could be emails going back and forth, which could take weeks. It could take months before you actually get an answer back. And that's not really how a business wants to engage. You don't want to wait weeks and months before you understand why it was blocked in order for you to change any of your engagement. It's not very reliant. And if you don't have somebody on the carrier level that you're actually engaged with, who do you contact? You just contact the support team at the carrier. There's no engagement there in order for them to give you a rush answer. And a lot of the times businesses don't even know who they should contact. Okay, so they have a carrier, they can Google search a carrier support email address, but where does that get you? That doesn't really get you anywhere. It's like staying on hold with hold music for 45 minutes and not getting anywhere, and you get frustrated and you hang up.
What is something in your role that you think would surprise people that maybe people don't guess about carrier relations?
The most surprising part of a carrier relations role is how involved and how on top of you have to stay with the FCC and with federal and state regulations, whether that's TCPA and CTIA. It's constantly changing. And, there's amendments out there, there's regulations, there's filings, and, you have to stay on top of what's being filed. How are they going to amend it? How can we have pushback to where we can say, no, we don't want that? Really rallying around our own cause so that we businesses can stay more engaged with their customers with less regulation. Having involvement in all that as a carrier relations director, it's kind of cool because you're really on top of all of that information and you're staying engaged with a lot of different forums and webinars and also different groups out there. There's a lot of groups out there that are really rallying towards businesses being able to engage without all of these regulations and laws that are being applied. So it's nice to have a voice for your customer to be able to talk on their behalf and how to be a fight on their behalf. It's like, hey, you're pushing it too far.
What do you do to stay on top of it? There are websites that I check for TCPA compliance, things like that. Is there some place where you go to get information every day or weekly?
It's a lot of networking. Groups like PACE are really great. Groups out there that they're lawmakers that are actually staying engaged and have top knowledge of what's coming down the pipeline as far as regulations, state and federal. And so having involvement with groups like that and also other attorneys and, state lawmakers, it's something that I do on a daily basis, which is just networking and finding different groups to work with and finding different ways to find information. Also within that is just, going to the government websites themselves and actually, doing a lot of detailed analysis that way to see what's popping up and what's out there. And yeah, I do get emails with a webinar here or a forum here. So that's the other way that I kind of stay engaged.
What do you advise for a company that has a ton of data? Maybe they even invested a bunch of money into data, but they find out that for whatever reason, they're not able to text because they don't have opt-ins. Do you have any suggestions for businesses that come along that say, hey, how can I start getting in touch with these people? Is there a way to get them opted in? Is there any tricks or tips of the trade?
Most businesses nowadays have websites. You want to have a website that really defines you and shows your brand. Within Verse, we actually offer Verse Capture, which is a little widget that we put within the platform of your website that has all the opt-in information. So when a customer goes in and fills in their information, before they can hit submit, it's got all the disclaimers of the opt-in that they need. We built that all in for them. So something like that, to where business doesn't know where to start or how to actually engage with the opt-in. We make it very simple for them. We kind of have this one-stop shop that they can add this widget onto their website. The other way to engage with opt-in is, a lot of people feel that, well, we have a consumer that opted in at this point in time, so therefore we can just continue to text them and we don't have to have opt-out language. And every 30 days, you have to give your consumer an opt-out. A lot of businesses don't know that. So it really helps to work with somebody like a compliance team at Verse that can kind of keep you in the loop of all of that, but also can help you make it easier for you to advertise that onto your website or have that disclaimer on your website, to where you don't have to go through and even know the ins and outs of opt out.